Reverend MeeLing, Susan MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Lady MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle, Lady MeeLing America. I've been known by a few names, so I'm gonna... So it is, I'm guesstimating, very well known how there are certain aspects of the after effects of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, beyond just the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain, and that took a while to go away. I think the MRI, I think it was the 2000, sometime halfway through 2004, that's when there was no longer any of the residual blood on my brain after whichever one it was, as far as the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe. That was no longer picked up on the MRI. It took that long before it went away. But, you know, in regards to, that's personal medical history aspects. Nonetheless, in reference to the headaches and the migraines and the memory deficits and the cognitive disorders and going from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math, that's tough. So with the cognitive issues, and in also conjunction with the aspects of going from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math, I have a problem with numbers. Yeah, for the scuba diving instructors that I've had. Who could very much, the ones that I've had to teach in regards to math, it's because the Navy only taught me how to count up to 10. And so... and then the doctors have that 1 to 10 pain scale. So... my scuba diving instructors, that would be why I didn't understand. What do you mean 33 feet is 1 ATM? I could read numbers, it doesn't mean I understand them. That being said, I'm sure that would make so much more sense to my open water National Geographic scuba instructors and classmates. By a lot. And so it's a little late because I was back in 2009. This is 2020. I can't count that high. And so, not without making notations. So, you know, in reference to scuba diving and going to the Vandenberg, you know, 99 ATMs, or whatever the actual, 999, oh, no, that was the first safety stop before this. See, there's that cognitive thing. The 99 ATMs is where my first safety stop was. But I thought it was feet, and so I'm alive, obviously. Nonetheless, I couldn't do the math. However, you know, yep. Yeah, 99 ATMs was the first safety stop, and then 15 ATMs apparently, or 60, yeah. So either way, I did 2 safety stops, and I survived. Probably should have done more than 2 safety stops. Though probably, hypothetically, I'm just saying the scuba dive master on the Starfish Enterprise said we could not go into the Vandenberg. He didn't say I couldn't swim around it. He didn't say I couldn't swim around the other ships that were down there. He said the scuba divers couldn't go in to the Vandenberg. Didn't say I couldn't take pictures of the mer people that were in the Vandenberg. So, there's that. Didn't say I couldn't take pictures of the floor at the bottom of the ocean. Said I couldn't go in to the Vandenberg. Just saying. Technically. So, just throwing that out there, Nonetheless, couldn't do the math. Still probably a little off in regards to numbers, but I did the best I could. Nonetheless, so in regards to my Medal of Honor art project. So, there was, I did a lot of research to make sure, not just because, yes, majorly because of the fact that, Medal of Honor award is the top award in the United States of America's Armed Forces, doesn't matter which branch, but if there are individuals who need a reference point as to how much I will do to verify that I know as much as I can. You can look into scuba diving and my certifications for the amount of research that I did as far as finding all the numbers I could in regards to the counting aspect and making sure to find every name I possibly could of each Medal of Honor recipient. And that included, at that time there were 71 living Medal of Honor recipients, to make sure that I did everything I could. And so, I have as many scuba certifications as I have. Apparently a total of 26. For the longest time I thought I only had 16. Scuba certifications. And so, in that regard, I did a lot to make sure that I found every name I possibly could. And while I have completed videos before about Medal of Honor recipients and my Medal of Honor art project and the aspects of during the trips, and in the modern day book I wrote how I had checked multiple websites to make sure that I was able to find every name that would have been there. I went through the Congressional Medal of Honor Historical Society. I went through Home of Heroes. I went through the Congressional Medal of Honor website, run with the .gov as well as .mil. I went through Find a Grave. I went through several websites on top of those to make sure that I was able to find every name possible. So that way I counted everyone, despite my issues with numbers. And so while I put the numbers that I found, because I made a list, not only, so when I was in Washington State, I had ordered a map set. I ordered that way my son could have the world map and take a look at the different areas, and he could learn stuff. But also I got the United States map. And so I looked at the way I did it was I had printed off each of the names the way I had shown in a prior video in reference to the receipts, but also showed the two states, Nebraska and Iowa. That was how I had made the list for each of the states. And then I counted each one, because I know I can't be the only person who has issues reading certain things when it comes to online. And so I printed all the different states out and the numbers, and that included at Arlington National Cemetery. I mean, at every state, and even in regards to Virginia, I had that separate from, not saying that it's separate, but in regards to the numbers that were in Arlington National Cemetery compared to the state of Virginia. And so that way, whenever I got to plan going to those areas to make sure that I got all the numbers, meaning the names, but having the counted numbers, that, you know, no matter what, and, you know, so I did a lot of research, and then after I had come up with the total that I could find, and I didn't have to have, in the regards of having my son add up because of the different states on my website and the numbers of the artwork pieces that I completed. They were all in one list, so I could count them and make sure that I got all of them, as far as the names and location and all that information you saw in that prior video. And that included by their name, their home area where they came from, the city of the state that they were buried in, which branch, what their rank was, the cemetery location itself, and then the location within the cemetery, because I wanted to get as much information as possible, so that way I was respectful, obviously, in that regard. And so I had printed out two lists. One was like in regards to Nebraska and Iowa, and then the other one had the 71 had time. And I just feel like there are so many compassionate, honorable, and righteous ones that are extremely infuriated. Rightfully so. Nonetheless, so I did everything I could to make sure, because I very much understand, not because I've earned a Medal of Honor, but because of a multitude of aspects. And, so, you know, while I had been repeatedly accused of hating the state of Texas by my now ex-boyfriend, one thing he could not understand beyond the fact of I didn't blame everybody in the state of Texas, you know, for what occurred. Similarly to how I don't blame everybody in the Army for my head injury, I don't even blame the entire battalion I was in. So, you know, it was only that one particular drill sergeant. So, on top of that, you know, my son and my daughter were born in the state of Texas. I woke up in the state of Texas. I had to relearn everything in the state of Texas. So, you know, while for an example of my now ex-boyfriend, Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr., I, you know, did not hate the state of Texas. I've thrown temper tantrums, I don't deny that. I don't deny throwing temper tantrums. But I have not blamed the entire state for everything. I have wondered in other regards of, you know, how in this state, of all states, with as many, you know, military guys could, you know, certain aspects go on, and not blaming just one of those, like, how in of all states, you know. So in reference to, you know, I found 80 total. So that map that I had ordered on each state, I took my list and went through each state and wrote the numbers on the map. And then when I completed that, I put little gold dots in glue to where the different locations were. To the ones that I had found, so that way I could look and kind of plan this stuff out easier for myself. And then after I completed the states that I had completed, I had drawn the lines, the path that I went, to keep a record for myself of which way, so that way, you know, if I found a different route, I could keep that in mind in comparison. And so, and I wouldn't draw out where I was going to go the next time, because I didn't know if the GPS would take me the route. I mean, I printed out the MapQuest directions. I went through a lot of stuff to make sure I had as much information as possible. When I was out doing that, so, for example, I found a total of 250 in the state of New York, or the Pennsylvania. It was Pennsylvania, and then the state of New York was 200. One was 200, one was 250. I know in New Jersey it was 64 total, which seemed odd. It did seem odd in total for the state of Texas. And I discussed this with the male owner of the club that I had volunteered at, that it seemed really, really weird that in the state of Texas, of all states, there'd only be 80. And then in Arizona, that was another one that seemed really weird, that there were only 11 in total. I mean, I know that there's only a certain, number of Medal of Honor awards that have been awarded, but in Arizona, that just seemed really weird. And another example, Louisiana, only 4. Same thing with Arkansas. There was only 4 in Arkansas. In Georgia, I think it was 12. And that was it as far as what I found. One of the Carolinas was 17 and the other was 18. Virginia was like 42, and then total of 800 in Arlington. So, I did as much research as I could, and so like for Washington State, total of 57 that were found like name-wise, but only able to find 56. In Oregon, I found 16, though I found 17 names. In Idaho, a total of 17, but 18 names. Montana, a total of 20, and I found all 20. Wyoming, I found 7 names, but 6 total. In Utah, 4, but I only found 2. Nevada, I only found 1 name, and I found them. Colorado, a total of 28 names, but found 27 names and found 22. South Dakota, a total of 8, but only found 4. Nevada, or North Dakota, found 4 names, but only found 3. As examples, in California, a total of 200 or 250. So, that's a... It was 12 in Mississippi that I found. Total. In Washington, D.C., 38. Delaware, 9. Illinois, 150. Ohio, 110. So, you know, there are some examples. I wrote the rest in the modern day book. So, I did do everything possible to find as much as I could as far as information. And even though certain websites had names that other ones didn't, I still kept those as a just in case, even if it was only on one website. Obviously this is before any understanding that hacking or the like was a possibility. So, because that wasn't until 2018 when I first went to CID at JBLM, who told me to contact the Pentagon, and the Tacoma Police, who told me to contact the FBI. So I have, obviously, among a few others, because I wanted it understood that I mean, you could even take that into a consideration as to how much I tried in regards to making sure I got all the information in regards to contacting and mailing letters to as many as I did. To attempt to make sure that I did everything respectfully of each individual area. And, so yeah, obviously I could not find some of the names. I honestly figured it was because some of the stuff that was done couldn't be fully known in regard. I thought it was like the stars in reference to the CIA and you know, the FBI in certain regards, where, you know, sometimes you just can't have that particular information. That's what I thought at first after the going to CID. That's and the Tacoma Police. I kind of figured that was the initial aspect at first, before realizing about the hacking and stalking issue. So apparently that might not be the case. And since, like, in Senator Murray's office, she had a book that was of the names for the guys in Washington State. There was over 200 names. their stories. And so, obviously it wasn't like the star thing in regards to not being able to get all the names. So, I did try though. I did everything I could to make sure. I'm very, very, very CDO when it comes to making sure I get the correct amount of stuff as best as possible. I also kind of figured part of it might have been because of the fact that it is known about my issues with electronics. I kind of figured that maybe there were certain locations where a certain Medal of Honor, and I know this probably doesn't sound like smart to some people. However, I kind of figured in regards to after meeting with CID at JBLM and the Tacoma Police telling me to contact the FBI, I kind of figured maybe there were certain locations that some of the Medal of Honor guys were at that they were in the vicinity of certain techie stuff that I didn't need to be near. I know that doesn't necessarily come across as the most normal way to think about that. However, I know that it's known, like by Geek Squad and Best Buy, about my issues with technology. And so in turn, like the NSA, knowing that sort of stuff. And so I kind of figured that maybe when I was researching stuff, that would be a, it's known that there's, by whichever government organization, that this stuff is in this vicinity, and me having the issues that I have, don't go there. You don't get to have that name. That's one of the things I thought after some of the stuff in regards to when I was at the lodge at Madrona apartment complex. Because, as everything I was trying to figure it out, was one of those, well, I mean, it's not like it's not known. Not just because I wrote about it, but because of others that have seen it in person. After effects of. So, I kind of figured that was a way to keep that from being a problem. May not be the most, again, it might not be the most normal way to look at things. However, it is known by multiple government associations throughout the United States of America. So I just kind of figured when writing all those letters that maybe that was part of it. I didn't want to believe about the hacking or the stalking thing, despite certain aspects. Though I thought that at least I'd have the names able to be found. So, that's, I did do the research, though, to make sure I could find every one of them. So, that particular note, pun intended, because of the ding, this particular video. So, share